Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next installment of the Overmare Studios podcast. I am Zach. With me is Dragmeister and Hamish. I is it Mile or Miles or my
Milne.
Mil?
Also, I'm very ill. I've been forced into this. They said I had to do it now or not do it at all, so I'm here
Yeah,
and I'm ill.
yeah, we have a gun to his head.
Yes.
We had to drag him to America because he's British, so he's not allowed to have guns. Anyways,
Yeah.
so yeah, we have a sort of some big stuff to talk about. Afterwards, we'll answer some questions. We might talk about some of the other things that may have this should be releasing with the demo. So yeah, we might talk a little bit about that. And yeah, so the first big thing, as you probably already know if you read the blog post that accompanied this, which there should be a link to it in the description, is that we are sort of officially changing the name, but it's not really a name change since we never really actually had a name for our game. Well, nothing really official.
Well,
It's just like Fallout Equestria, the game.
yeah. I mean, it kind of was the name that everyone knew it by, so it's a pretty big change that we are sort of changing the name of the final product to something else.
Which,
But
to make
before anyone gets too upset or like start typing on the comments how everything is ruined and how everything is going to shit, we have not received the CND or anything, or cease and desist or anything like that, and this is just to like preserve our future better. And it does not change anything else about the game. It's literally just the name.
yeah, this was all our choice. We didn't have, Bethesda or Hasbro knocking down our door saying, "Hey, you guys stop." This was
Yeah.
all us, particularly
And
Hamish,
we
so you
didn't-
can blame
Yeah,
him.
and we didn't do the decision like on a whim. Like it was something that was talked about over a longer period of time.
Yeah,
inside
it
the
was like
team.
a whole at least 2 hours, so it was a pretty big discussion.
I mean, we do think we have some pretty good reasons for changing
Yeah.
the name.
Anyways,
It's
yeah,
not-
which we'll
yeah.
be going through in this podcast
Yeah.
for your convenience.
yeah, to kind of stop jumping around it, the name obviously is Ashes of Equestria, and I mean some people might like it, some people might not. We had a pretty big discussion over what the name should be. We felt it should be that. There were quite a few other selections. There was actually a very large selection, some of which were less than good. But yeah, I'm pretty sure we're gonna have a list of them in the blog post. Like we honestly
Yes.
don't know, because we're actually recording this before we actually wrote up the blog post. So
Well, the blog post is pretty much already written.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to change things to it now.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you should be saying this in the podcast, but if you want to change things to
we're
it, then
all-
look in the
like,
Google Doc and
Point is
change
the
it.
post is not finalized yet, and we are recording
Yeah.
this at least a couple of weeks before it goes live, so a bunch of it can change.
But
Yeah.
at least in the current version of it, we do go through the entire process of how the name was chosen and all the other alternate names. So, yeah, we're being completely transparent with everything. So, yeah, nothing to worry about on that front.
yeah, so pretty much one of the big reasons that we started on was to create our own identity. Like we already mentioned, we were kind of unofficially known as, Fallout Equestria the game, but as some of you guys might already know, there's actually quite a few other projects out there that are also known as Fallout Equestria the game. I know there's
Yeah.
at least a Flash game. Some people even refer to the Little Pip mod on Fallout 2 as Fallout the game. There's even the mod on New Vegas, which, funny enough,
Yeah, at Gardens of Equestria, I think it was.
yeah. I mean, there's quite a few out there, and I mean, the whole joke was that, someone's talking about it in the like a casual conversation with a friend of theirs, and they're like, "So yeah, did you see that Fallout Equestria thing that the Overmare Studios is making?" Like, who's Overmare Studios? Like, are they making the video or the TV show, the movie, the mod, the game, the other game, or the plushies? Like, who are they? So I mean,
Or the radio play.
yeah, so I mean, there's
Yeah.
there's quite a few things out there. We wanted to have something that kind of people can immediately associate with and know what they're talking about. Like Drag already said though, it's still Fallout Equestria. It's just a name change right now.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
are still.
it will still be like the subtitle of it. I guess will still be like based on Fallout Equestria by KCAT. So we are not trying to hide that in any way. And yeah,
We're not going to do anything really dumb like change all the names of the characters a little bit and make them all our own OCs and stuff like that. Like, it's still going to be a little bit.
Twilight Sprinkle.
Their story.
She's the best. But yeah, I mean, to like we already mentioned, we're not going to change anything. The only time that we would change like names of like locations, characters, and so on is literally if Hasbro does send a C&D, which, like we said, they haven't, and more than likely they won't. But you know,
yeah.
I mean, it was unlikely from the beginning.
Yeah,
but
it's just
after this,
the reason we are changing the name of the game now instead of waiting for possible C&D or whatever else like we are doing with location names is because it's a lot easier to change something that is purely inside the game, but the name of the game like relates to the brand and like how we are known across the fandom and beyond. So changing that later on is much more difficult and like can severely affect our audience and so on.
Yeah, it all comes down to name recognition. If we change our name, you know, like 2-3 years later, if we did get a C&D from Bethesda, then I mean, at that point, anyone that tries to search for, you know, Fallout Equestria the game or anything like that, people that haven't actually found out about this, you know, they wouldn't really be able to find it that easily. But you know, like we want to make sure that it's as soon as possible, so that if anything does happen in the future, it's still easier to, you know, find us and all that. However, like we said, you know, it is sort of to deal with legalities as well, because whenever it comes to Bethesda, it's a little bit more shaky in terms of the legalities of our game, because whenever it comes to Hasbro, they very clearly, or they have to clearly define what those characters and the locations and the names and all that are used for. You know, for example, if they put a trademark at trademark is on items specifically, right?
It's got a well-defined scope.
Okay,
the trademarks on Hasbro's things, i.e. the main six and My Little Pony or everything related to that, is on toys primarily. And the things which would really affect us are like the colours and designs of the main six, and those are just for toys. But Bethesda's trademarks, they have a scope which obviously includes games. So us putting the word Fallout in the name of our game is probably a trademark violation if we had done it now. The technicality that we were using beforehand was that the word Fallout on its own was only trademarked for games that were sold on disc and downloadable games for consoles, but not downloadable games for PCs. And they later rectified this when they released Fallout 4 to include downloadable games for PCs, but we were using it beforehand. So in theory, if we were ever taken to court, we'd be able to say, but we were using it before the trademark was filed, so we don't actually have to do anything about it. But we don't really want to rely on that. Like, we would rather have to not go to court at all, if at all possible. So we're sort of preemptively, as Drag mentioned, securing our future is the main thing, making it so that, we can't really get any C&Ds from anyone, or at least none that are not completely stupid.
Now, it is
or ones that we aren't able to rectify with 5 minutes of work.
Yeah, I mean,
we would be able to do with all the characters and locations and so on.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to understand one thing about C&Ds is that nothing stops them from actually still sending one. The fact of the matter is that C&Ds for the most part are just a formal please stop from companies. They send them to literally everyone for any reason. It doesn't even actually matter if they have a case for it or not. They will send them just simply to get people to stop. It does, there's nothing actually preventing them from doing that. We could be 100% legal, making something that has nothing to do with Fallout, and they can still send a C&D. And we have actually seen this, whenever it came to Mojang with Scrolls. I mean, it was very clear that they weren't copying Elder Scrolls, but they still sent the C&D to them saying, hey, you know what, that's ours. You can't use that. If I remember, Mojang actually won that, obviously, but yeah, I mean, sometimes it can get a little bit murky in terms of legalities, and we just kind of want to not get into those waters at all.
Yeah,
It's
there
'cause
is no benefit from us in any possible scenario from like risking anything like that.
Yeah.
although that being said, we aren't just going to roll over for anything.
Oh, yeah.
If someone demands us that we stop everything that we're doing, we're obviously going to fight it because we are, as of now, well, as you're hearing this, completely in the right. We are completely 100% legal and hopefully bulletproof in terms of copyright law and IP law in general.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that was the main thing with it because every time we did something, it was like, oh, you're going to get a C and D, or oh, what's it going to do if you get a C and D? Oh, it's going to get C and D so hard. Oh my god, it was such a pain to hear that basically.
Yeah.
Because our answer was usually, well, we probably won't, but now we can be like, we definitely won't, So.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, or like even if we would, like, we definitely would be able to fight it.
Yeah.
Now, to get into something that some of you may be a little bit more skeptical about or might raise a few eyebrows, is one thing that also this means is that technically we can accept donations now, and for the most part we kind of are sort of looking into that. And the whole reason why is because whenever you're creating a game, a lot of the software, a lot of the add-ons, a lot of the stuff that you have to get for the game to actually run, it does cost money, and it can cost quite a bit of money. We're not looking into like
we have been using, like, even just for the server costs for the website and the repository and so on, like, it is starting to rack up, and some of the plugins we have been using aren't exactly from the cheaper end. But that being said, like, even if and when we accept donations or anything of the like, the game itself will always be free. We won't be selling the game. Any possible donations will always be just on, if you want to help us, go for it. But you won't be need to pay for the actual game itself.
Yeah. Your lack of giving us money is not going to hinder the game in any way. Like we will be able to cope, but it would be really cool if you have a load of money and you want to give some of us to it. We can say, yeah, you can do that now.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, right now we're not looking into making full-time employees. I mean, depending on how popular this is, we might look into it. We might be talking with our team about that, and if we do, it would obviously make it so that the game probably will be actually in development a lot faster than it is. I mean, the simple truth of the matter is that whenever you're working on a game for free, you have real life, you have your job, you have school and all that takes priority over a free game. So, I mean, the whole aspect of actually, becoming legitimate for that is very, very, very far off into the future. But, it's not something that we're not looking into either. But on top of that, in terms of donations, one thing that we have thought of is a Patreon, something that, people can donate to, and, we won't make it where, people have to donate in order to get the demo or anything like that. Like we said, the game will always be free no matter what you do. If we do create a Patreon, we'll probably we'll probably do things like, maybe an early access, maybe allow people to play the buggy builds to kind of help with bug testing and all that, or have exclusive podcasts talking about the game, talking about the process. Maybe even
and basically give a more direct line to us in the sense, like, even if we are answering on the forums occasionally and so on, like, if we do a Patreon or chances are there will be some kind of a thing that we will be answering a lot more questions.
Yeah, directly and all that. Which, on top of that, one other thing that this also does mean, and it's something that you guys actually have been asking quite a bit about, probably for the last few years, is a online store. And it is something that we started thinking about last year, and it is something that we do want to try to do. We actually kind of do like making the the Fallout Equestria products that we've been making, and from what it seems like you guys like them as well, so we'll probably be looking into trying to set up an online store, which, I mean, for the most part, like before, whenever it came to the merchandise that we made, we had to be very careful in what we make. If you guys may have noticed, pretty much anything that we make has no images from the show or Fallout. It's one of the reasons why we've been comfortable selling those without any real issues. Characters like, say, Velvet Remedy, Little Pip, Calamity, those characters are not trademarked. And although, K-Cat did come up with them, technically they are free use. And, that is a little
Well, she's just cool with people using
Oh,
it.
yeah. But, I mean, whenever it comes to, like, the actual, the fact that they are ponies, that is actually not something that anyone can trademark. You can't trademark an art style or a direct idea. That's
or like a concept. You can't. That's like you can patent a concept, but patents apply basically to mechanical devices and not
technology
to
and all
works.
that. So I mean, like there's no real argument on whether or not that would be legal or not. But one thing that we have been like trying not to do is you might even notice that we don't even have our logo on it, which even that is simply because we didn't want to test the waters with Hasbro, because our logo does kind of look like Sweetie Belle. That may change in the future, because technically, we could say, oh no, it's not Little Pip, or it's not Sweetie Belle, it's the Overmare or whatever. It does look different a little bit, but I mean, we've been
and also there's scope as well, of course, because our scope is of course video games.
Which even on top of that, we prevented any sort of logos from the game itself. You don't see any Fallout Equestria logos on the posters or anything, simply because then that would mean that the word Fallout is on there, and that would pretty much kind of tie it into Fallout, the brand, which could prevent some or cause some problems. Like we said, they don't really have the scope for that, but I have actually read a few articles about Bethesda shutting down fan-made poster printers, because they were printing posters, even if they were completely community made, they still had like Fallout on them, which is their product. So I mean,
when it gets to merchandise, it's quite complicated, because that's generally considered to be under that sort of scope if it's merchandise directly related to that.
Yeah, I mean, so, it just comes down to it being a little bit more murky. But with the whole name change, now that's a little bit different. We're not nearly as limited. I mean, obviously, you probably won't exactly see any show characters, like even older versions of them as posters. I mean, the older versions maybe, since they would look a little bit different, but I mean, you won't. It's still a little bit murky, and you probably won't be seeing anything like that. But yeah, we're trying to look into that stuff. But to get onto a more positive note, where I think we'll probably talk about a little bit about the selection process. I mean, it's in the blog post, but we can go into a little bit more detail here. Whenever it came to the name selection, we were going to have a community competition for it, but one thing that we did kind of want to make a point about is that it sort of had to do, or we wanted to make sure that the name had to do with the concept and tone of the game, as well as try to tie into, the show, the fact that it's a Fallout game, or based on Fallout, and all that. And for the most part, we did feel like it would be much easier in terms of the selection process if we just kept it in-house, which is...
Yeah, we all, like, even in-house, like, we got probably like 50 suggestions.
It was probably more than that,
not
honestly.
even more than that. So, like, just going through those and, like trying to settle on the best ones, like, that everyone in the team can agree on, even that took not insignificant amount of time. So, like, if we had been doing that for the public as well, like, there would have been a large chance that it would have been taken on forever, and, like, in the end, it's like a lot of people would have been unhappy regardless.
Yeah.
I mean, we would end up still reserving a right to veto anyway. So we didn't want to give this sort of false sense of choice to people.
Since in the end, like, this is still our game, in the sense that, like, we are the ones representing it, and if we weren't able to be fully 100% behind the name that gets chosen, like at that point, it will just be kind of.
It would really suck. It would really kill our motivation.
It will kind of suck for us personally.
Yeah, I mean, it would be kind of depressing if we ended up, you put it out and you say, okay, guys, you guys get to choose our name. It's like, okay, what do you guys choose? How about for your game you call it Hitler Did Nothing Wrong? Like, I don't know about that. Like, that seems a little offensive to people.
Or game face.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, honestly, anyone that has seen the sort of polls that big name companies have put up for name change or names for like various different things knows that, to be honest, letting the public choose the name of something tends to end badly. I mean, it's nothing against anyone in particular, but I mean, it's just how things
It's just
work.
the reality of situation in the internet.
Yeah.
And like, while there was like, one could argue that we could have at least like chosen the few best ones and like let the community choose from those. But to be honest, that was actually our backup plan if we can't reach a definite conclusion. But in the end, Ashes of Equestria actually came like first, like with not insignificant margin.
Yeah, I mean, the only other one that even came close was Balefire's Wake, I think it was.
Yeah,
and
that's the one I came up with, by the way.
Yeah, and I mean, that one, it was like the next biggest chosen, or the next most well-chosen name, but like it wasn't even close to Ashes.
That's not actually true. The margin was about four or five people, essentially, who preferred Ashes over Balefire's Wake. But the margin of like Balefire's Wake to the next one down was like 20.
Yeah, so
that was the big step.
Yeah,
between Ashes and Balefire, it was actually reasonably small, but it wasn't like nothing at all. But it was
Yeah, but from the like how many did we have voting? Like 40 people. It is still like 10% margin.
Yeah, it wasn't just like one or two people, but yeah.
Yeah,
we did have a lot of names which we basically just discarded like outright and just looking through the name suggestion documents now. I mean, one thing that we thought about naming it for a long time, like our default name, if we couldn't use Ford Equestria anymore, was FOE, just the initials. But then we sort of figured that's a bit like, people sort of know what you mean, and it's a bit of well, why are you calling it that? Oh, we're calling that for copyright reasons. I mean, that's
and like
really.
when you are like, if you are representing it to anyone who doesn't know what it is, at that point things become tricky, and it's a lot harder to actually explain it to anyone outside of the fandom. And
well, it's not even just that. It more comes down to the fact that it's harder to explain it in a legal sense, like in terms of keeping the whole name legal. I mean, if you sit there and say, yeah, so our game is legal because it's called FOE, it doesn't have Fallout in it, and then someone comes up to you and says, okay, so what does that mean? Like, what does FOE stand for? And you're like, oh, it stands for yeah, it stands for that. Sorry, I couldn't hear you. What it stands for? It stands for Equestria.
Yeah.
I mean, if we say that, it stands for Fallout Equestria, then, I mean, technically we're admitting, yeah, so it still has a Fallout in the name, or at least it sort of implies it or not. It comes down to the whole fact that it would be technically legal, but it's legal because of a technicality, which isn't.
But actually, before I forget again, I meant to bring things up earlier as well, but something worth pointing out is that some listeners might be wondering about, but like Ashes Off is obviously fine, but what about Equestria, since it is like mentioned location in the show and whatnot, but it is Equestria as a word is actually not trademarked to any capacity.
Yeah, it's
like
pretty much
in any related field. Like there are a couple instances, I think even those were almost all expired, that related to actual real life horses and like racing and stuff like that. But
and there was hairdressers as well, wasn't there?
Yeah, I think that one was expired. But yeah, anything remotely related to the show or like games or anything like that. The only ones that even had Equestria in it were Equestria Girls specifically.
Yeah, like whenever
like,
it comes to trademarks, you can't just say, "Oh, we trademarked Equestria Girls so therefore, we also trademarked Equestria." No, whenever
Yeah,
you
it doesn't
say,
work like that.
yeah, whenever you make a trademark, you are trademarking those specific words in that specific order. If it's Equestria Girls, you have just Equestria Girls. If someone made exactly the same show but called it just Equestria, technically that is actually illegal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if they wanted to trademark just Equestria, then the onus is on them to actually trademark that.
Yeah,
they're not allowed to
um,
infer the subcomponents of that trademark because
and we actually
the onus is on them.
We actually have some precedents to this, like something that was mentioned before with like the Mojang and Scrolls
Exactly.
and Elder Scrolls. Like it wasn't enough that they have Elder Scrolls as trademark. Like they would have needed the Scroll specifically.
Yeah, I mean, whenever, like, a great example on why this is a little bit murky is if you guys remember way back in the day with the whole, I can't remember their names, but the reaction guys, the ones that tried to trademark the word react.
React,
Yeah, like that was actually, like, the whole thing is that whenever it came to that, technically they could actually do that, and they were actually getting very close to having that trademarked. And the reason why is because that is a word that, for the most part, isn't actually widely used. I mean, you don't really hear any companies or any games that have the words React in it, so no one's really contesting that. But whenever
that's not technically how it works because you can submit a trademark application for literally anything. Like I could do it for
you can, but like if it's widely enough used, then there is a chance it will get denied anyway. But to my knowledge, with React, they would have actually most likely gotten it through.
Well,
but,
we don't actually know that.
They
actually did submit their objections to it, and the ruling wasn't actually given before.
Well,
but
there is it wasn't still certain that
it
would have been denied either. So, but let's get back.
Yeah, the point is that, like, whenever it comes to Equestria, like, not like people outside of the horse trainer community, obviously they don't really use the word Equestria very often, but it is a fairly widely used word, like just Equestria, equestrian, especially equestrian, because equestrian refers usually to people that work with horses, say like jockeys for horse racing, people that actually care for, like, raise horses, horse breeders and all that. It's fairly a widely used word, and there actually is, I think there was a magazine that was literally called Equestria. I think it was even called Equestria Daily, funny enough. It is like a widely used word. It's just not a widely used word for people that isn't in that industry. So for the most part,
which is the point, of course. Like you couldn't trademark the word computer in a scope of selling computers, for instance.
Yeah.
You can't like describe exactly what the thing is, but I could trademark canned food called computer if I wanted to, because they're different things, and one doesn't describe the other.
Yeah, it all comes under the scope and the actual meaning.
Yeah.
And
it's all very boring and kind of monotonous. It doesn't really matter.
But the long and the short of it is that if we are now on the ball enough that we are going to be watching the trademarks, and if someone does decide to actually trademark the word Equestria in the scope of games, then we are going to be filing objections to that, and therefore it will probably be denied. So, yeah. Because if there's prior art, then that's basically the end of it.
And even if it did, like the trademark itself would go through, like it would not apply to us because we had it already. Like you can't like enforce trademarks or copyrights like
after the fact.
Retroactively that thing.
But we could block it from ever going through to begin with, just to be safe.
Possibly
safe on that. So,
yeah. Anyways, to move on to the next thing is that another thing that a lot of people have actually asked us about is like things like, are you gonna be putting the game on Steam, or I think Hamish, you've been kind of pushing for itch.io.
I mean, all going well. By the time this comes out, the demo will be out, so you should be able to download it from itch.io.
Yeah.
As of now.
So like But yeah, the bigger point is that that is definitely something that we want to look into. Actually having a wider distribution. Funny enough, Steam, like not too long ago from recording this, they announced their whole plans on whatever that was. What was it called again?
Steam Direct.
Steam Direct.
Yeah, so I mean, actually getting on Steam is a little bit more easier now, but it obviously does cost actual money.
It's easier in the sense
it's
that
easier and harder. Yeah.
It's easier in the sense that you no longer need like specific amount of people like backing you, but you do need to say like pay for it.
Quite
Possibly.
a significant amount too. Like
Yeah, like that. I don't think they have necessarily like fully locked it down yet, but still, most likely it's gonna be.
I don't even want to get into that argument. Like before we even started this.
Drag is convinced that it's $5,000, and I've seen no sources that say that, so I'm not convinced.
This is why I don't want to start it. Just stop.
Yeah, Hamish, stop.
Anyways, yeah. So I mean, we do want to put it on there. Actually get the name out there. Try to get the game a little bit more widely distributed. Which that brings me to the next point is that. Although we did mention about donations and Patreon and all that, the fact of the matter is that although that will help us sort of in the short term, whenever, like, the whole point of us changing the name now, the whole point of why we're talking about putting it on Steam, is that the one big thing that keeps us working on this, probably the most important thing, is your guys' comments. Your words of praise, questions, people saying, yeah, you guys are doing God's work. Good job, man. Like stuff like that.
And criticism, of course.
Even criticism, yeah. Like the occasional, you guys are faggots. That motivates us too. It's like we gotta prove that guy wrong.
That's not criticism. That's just like mean comments, but
that's just. Like,
either way,
criticism is your game sucks. That's like something.
No, that's an opinion.
Yeah,
that's an opinion. Criticism is that
this is why your game sucks. That's criticism.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, yeah, that's true. It's a good point.
Yeah, so I mean, criticism, even sometimes hateful comments can raise up our spirits because sometimes they're actually legitimately funny. So yeah, I mean, everything, all sorts of comments, those are what drives us. Even things like views. Page views, going on to our DA account, leaving comments, views on that. All of that is what drives us forward. It's pretty much the only thing that's like, it's basically our currency right now. It's the thing that we pretty much can pay our quote unquote, or our teammates, the thing that keeps them motivated as well, because we don't have actual money to pay them and we're not a legitimate company. So I mean,
like on that, like even if we are like accepting donations and so on, like we are not naive in the sense that we don't like even remotely expect that we will be able to make even quarter of the money that we would require to actually develop this full time or anything like that. So like those comments and everything else and publicity and so on, those are literally the only thing that are gonna keep us going in the future as well, even if we do get donations to help with some of it. But yeah,
I mean, like my whole point is that even if we do get donations, the thing that you guys can do to help us the most is to spread word of the game. Go out, put it onto some niche forum in some gaming community that people may never have heard of, or go into big ones and talk about it. That is what we really need. That is what we need to actually get bigger, to get draw in new members to help us build this game. That is what we are striving towards and what we're asking of you guys the most of. Go out, put our names out there, let people know that we're doing this, tell them that we're trying our hardest to try to make a game absolutely for free for you guys, or even if it isn't absolutely free with technical donations and all that, we're doing it without getting directly paid. So I mean, it's those things are always
and everyone
helpful.
will still be able to access the game with donations or without. So.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
and like regarding that, like even if we were to put it on Steam or anything, it will still be free there as well.
Yeah.
And like then the whole Steam thing is not likely to happen in at least a couple years or something until we have something that is a build that is genuinely like impressive and good enough. Like not fine like. It's not like we will wait for the absolute final product before we consider that, but we do realize that the current builds are not all that like impressive in all meaning of the word.
Well, it's not that they're not impressive. It's more that they're not very substantial. I mean, we know that
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
very.
that's better word for it. Like there is so much that is still missing, and unless you look into it, it's very hard to get full picture of what we are trying to make it into.
Yeah, I mean, it is one thing that we actually plan on improving in the future. Trying to create or start to work on what's known as gray boxing, which are basically making very, very rough placeholder models so that we can, create other cities. Our next plan is actually the city of Hope. That's pretty much the next location. Is going to be kind of an industrial city, but I mean, right now we don't really have very many models for, an industrial city. So yeah, I mean, gray boxing will help us to do that. Like, show you guys what we plan to do. Obviously, we also plan on creating quests, story mode or story elements, as well as, notes, different, all that sort of different things to help expand the world as much as we can and give you guys a broader picture of what we want for the end game, which is quite a ways off. We know that, but I mean, if you, it all comes down to the fact that you kind of have to know about the development process for video games in order to actually fully understand where we're at with this. I mean, from the demos, it may seem like we pretty much are just starting, but the fact of the matter is that all of this stuff is stuff that it takes a very long period of time to make, but it doesn't take very long to use. Once you say have, it might take a year to make 50 house models. But once you have those 50 house models, it takes like a month to actually make a town out of them. It doesn't. It all comes down to, uh,
Reusability
yeah,
is a lot of it, and like something I will like to point out, like in case that there are any like uh, game devs like listening or so much before they lose their pants, is that we of course like have known like what greyboxing is and what why it's good and so on for a long time. It's not something that we just came up right now. We have just been admittedly a little bit too perfectionists in terms of what we want to show and so on. So we have always like been trying to push a bit too hard probably on like having everything as finished as looking as possible of anything we show. So we haven't really we haven't done greyboxing, for example, to the extent that we probably should have.
yeah. I mean, even whenever it comes to items and weapons and all that, that's even something that we probably admittedly should have started. It's not necessarily gray boxing, but it is something that we should have started adding in later. A great example is that even though right now, we only have the assault rifle, you can technically reuse that model for, say, the Zebra assault rifle or maybe the Griffin assault
Or
rifle.
any automatic weapons in general, like we can use it as a placeholder.
Yeah, and actually, get the systems working for those weapons. Get the like for example, for the Zebra assault rifle for us, it's supposed to be a burst action. We could use the model for the normal assault rifle or the equestrian assault rifle as a placeholder model for the Zebra one while we, make the weapon itself, like all the functionality behind it, things like the stats, how it works, and so on, so that once we actually do get that model for the Zebra assault rifle, then we can just throw it in and then it's done. We don't have to sit there, put it in, get all the animation set up, get all of the uh, programming done for it, and then implement it into the game. It's already done. We just need to put it in, and we're done.
Yeah. So like probably enough on that topic. Like we have been starting to slip quite away from the original topic at this
Yeah, yeah,
point.
Yeah. So
Well, I mean,
where were we at?
Well, I mean,
before?
for the most part, we've pretty much talked about everything that we need. I mean, we talked about the whole.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
Just like uh, we have been going on for what 45 minutes, 40 minutes now.
Yeah,
So
40
like
minutes.
we might want to like
Let's
Yeah,
wrap
let's
up
try to
anything
wrap
go
it
to
up.
anything we
questions.
want to with the names if there is this still anything, and then go to the questions and go those through.
Mm.
Yeah, for the most,
Um,
I don't think there's really anything else that we need to talk about for the
yeah.
name change.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got
Yeah.
a new logo, of course.
Oh yeah.
Because if
Yeah. Yeah, of course. And
I mean, that was the main delay. Like, we actually decided all this stuff months and months ago, but we had to wait for someone to model the logo. So that's why you're only hearing about this now.
well, that, and we wanted to sync it up with the demo
Yeah.
release as well.
See,
Yeah.
this is what we
Yeah.
were talking about before with the whole perfectionist thing. Like, we didn't want to actually announce it until we actually had, the fancy logo done. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it all comes down to the fact that it is probably one of the biggest things that plague indie developers is that whole idea that you don't want to push anything unless it looks absolutely amazing, because you don't think that anyone is going to find any value into it unless it looks as good as you can get it. So I mean, it is a problem. It is something that many indie developers struggle with, and it's even something that even some large developers even struggle with. Maybe not AAA developers, but it's a problem, and we are trying to fix it and get a little bit better at it. But yeah,
I think the main thing that will help with that is when we get the game into a stage where we can start doing small incremental updates, and then the occasional major update, which will add new stuff. But where we can be sort of constantly adding things to
when
to
we
the
get
game.
more of the content creation phase, essentially.
yeah. I mean that.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned.
But I mean, I'm not even necessarily even that, but just in a way that, because the big problem is that we add sort of stuff, and then the game's in a state where it's completely unplayable, and then we have to spend ages fixing it. It's sort of like continuous integration, but not actually continuous integration, because that would be completely dumb.
Well, that's
But,
what I
you know.
kind of meant with the content creation phase, is that we would have all the major systems done so that we will not have anything actually breaking everything all the time, because we are
Yeah.
working on such huge and complicated systems.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, even like probably right now the two biggest things that are preventing us from creating demos a lot more frequently, like every month or so, is literally because at this point we're kind of in that point where the programmers are making the core systems, even very simple things that we're gonna need, they can break things. Like a great example is, spoiler alert, we're gonna have a flare gun in the demo, and one of the things that I know I talked to Drag about adding into the game to make it a little bit more fun is to have it where there's fire damage whenever you hit someone with the flare. However, the problem is that we don't actually have a system for damage over time. That actually would have to be created from scratch. And while it's not something super crazy, it's not something that you can just put in like 3 ones and zeros and then bam, you're done. It does take a little bit of time.
Especially because our backend system, or the framework, is actually very rather complicated, because we are planning for it to be able to accommodate so many things. So adding changes to that is why something like that can take a long while. If this was a very much more simpler game, and then usually something like that would be a couple hours jobs, maybe, if even that. But because it will we already know that it will play into so many other things as well, in our future plans, that we can't just hack it in and
Well, we could just hack it in.
Well,
but
we could, but
we'd
it
be
will,
just duplicating our work later on, which is
since we will need to eventually do it properly anyway.
Yeah.
I'm sure all the sort of professional programmers will be sort of screaming at us now. Oh, we're not doing the agile development and all this and this sort of thing, because basically our sort of methodology was to try and make everything as general as possible, because we knew we would need it eventually. Whether that was wise or not is sort of up in the air. It depends on what your philosophy is in terms of development strategies. But that's what we're doing, and we're probably going to stick with it for the foreseeable future. So unfortunately, that means that you get everything happening in big chunks rather than a more sort of gradual improvement, which to the sort of uninitiated is what they would expect, but is not actually realistic for the way in which we're developing the game.
Yeah, I mean, even on top of that is the other big thing preventing really fast development is also the asset creation, which Although
Yeah.
it's probably one of the it's one thing that probably takes the least amount of time overall in terms of development time. It is one thing that's a very slow process. I mean, it's
Mm.
the whole thing is that art teams are almost always the first team that finish their jobs like in the entire game. Like they finish their jobs and they're basically sitting on their hands afterwards. And the reason why is because the process of making those models may be slow, but once you have them, then everything becomes much quicker. You're not waiting for them.
Mm.
Like if you want to build a city, you don't have to wait for the models to be done. You just take the models and you create the city. If
Yeah.
you want to make a new weapon, you don't have to, or if you want to change the or add in a new variation of a weapon or something, you don't have to sit there and wait for the model to be made and animated and all that. You just take the model, you put it in, you change the stats, there you go, it's done. So
Yeah.
And that's
it all comes
sort of all. Sorry.
yeah, it all comes down to the fact that right now that aspect is a very slow process. I mean, unless we actually found a bunch of people 50 people that said, "Oh yeah, we'll work for free. We have plenty of time." The fact is that creating the models, designing them up, planning them, how they're going to work with other things, it takes time. I mean, even especially for our weapons, it's not as simple as just making the weapon and it's done. We also have our add-on system that we're planning. We have various different other aspects, how they're going to fit into battle saddles, how mods are going to be added onto them, how attachments are going to be added onto them, how they'll look whenever they're firing, how they'll look whenever they're, put away. All that stuff has to be planned before it's being made, and all of that takes time, and it's very tedious, and it just takes away from the overall thing. But once those
And
are done, then it's done for good. You don't ever have to come back to it.
But that sort of all feeds into probably the biggest problem I would say with our development speed is that the actual availability of people is completely variable because
Yeah.
we're not, as I said, we're not working on this full time. Like for instance, myself, I thought I would be free over Christmas, and then a load of stuff immediately, turned up, and I basically couldn't do anything.
Yeah,
Um,
like it's very
you know,
hard for us to truly predict how much of stuff we are going to able to get done over any specific uh, period of time in the future, because like real life issues and job things and whatnot, they happen when they happen, as I'm sure like everyone knows. Like you don't always know them in advance, and obviously we need to work around that because there is literally nothing we can do about that. So sometimes that means that like certain 3-4 months of a year it's much slower in terms of like actual development progress than the rest of the year would be.
Yeah, I mean, a great example is I think it was probably about actually, yeah, it was last demo, I think it was leading up to the BronyCon demo. Uh Funny enough, I live in a kind of rundown house. It's not exactly very well taken care of. And my actual the breaker box for my house, it legitimately caught on fire. So for at least a week I had no power in my house, I had no internet, I couldn't even get on. The only way I was even able to contact these people were through my phone, which I did have Wi-Fi and I did have 4G on that, so I could go onto Discord and talk to people. So I mean it all comes down to whatever, like half the time the smallest what the thing that you expect the least, it more than likely is going to happen at least once or twice. And you really can't plan on those things. I mean, we've tried to make it so that whenever those things happen, the project isn't going to immediately just be completely stalled. And for the most part, that hasn't been the case. It just comes down to the fact that whenever people do disappear, it does slow the process down quite significantly. And it's not
Yeah,
something that you can truly plan for.
yeah, and like I guess this will be a good point to like also point out that we do like always accept new members on almost every department. I think
Except for
currently
music team.
music team and voice acting are the ones that we don't have applications, but I think every other department has applications open. So like, and we need more, desperately need more people. Like, if we are to like ever finish this in proper, like we do need more people than we have right now.
Anyways, to move on to another topic is we went through many of our other podcasts, some of which, or many of, like, and looked at some of the questions that we were given, many of which we did answer, some of which we didn't. There were even some new questions on older blog posts or podcasts that we never did answer. These were the ones that we actually found, and some of the ones that were asked a little bit more commonly and that we don't think that we ever answered before. So to start it off, the first one that we did notice was, will there be a cannibal perk in the game, or is the player going to be able to eat people? For the most part, technically yes. Like you if you want to, we have plans on how that will work, whether or not it's a perk or some sort of like something that you get through a quest or like a something like that. That's still to be decided. I mean, we did sort of plan on the perk, but yeah, I mean, you will be able to eat people is the bigger point.
Yeah, how you exactly get there is still up for the details.
Yeah. Next one, are there going to be ghouls in the game? This one was a little bit more broader, but we'll try to answer as much as we can. If you're talking about feral ghouls, yes, we're gonna have a feral ghoul version of the ponies, probably even the griffins in the game. We do want to take quite a bit of inspiration from the ghouls in Fallout 4, because admittedly, the Fallout ghouls were actually, or the Fallout 4 feral ghouls were actually very well designed. They looked, moved, and felt like they were, these crazy mutated zombie things that were extremely annoying and somewhat difficult to kill, and just kind of would zerg rush you, and even if you shot off their leg they would still crawl at you. We are trying to take some inspiration from that and try to design up our ghouls to be similar to that. But yes, I mean, we will have feral ghouls. In terms of the non-feral ghouls, the more the sentient ghouls or whatever you call them, yes, we'll have those as well. I mean, anyone that's read the story knows that there are a few important characters that are ghouls in the game. So, yeah, I mean, obviously we're gonna have them. The player will not be able to play as one, though. Unfortunately,
Yeah, it will just bring too many variations to like so many places of the script that it will not be very feasible for us to do and like have it be actually meaningful enough for it to matter.
not to mention it will mess with some of the systems in the game. Like not like super bad, but enough that it's wouldn't be a very good idea to add it in. We know that
Yeah.
there are the mods that allow you to play as ghouls, and I'm sure plenty of people say, "Oh, they do it just fine." It honestly just comes down to our own design decisions. That's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, that being said, we might have a perk or something similar to like how Fallout 4 at least had the qualification perk, like in terms of like the actual effects that they do and whatnot. But like in Fallout 4, like it won't actually turn you into ghoul, like in appearance wise or in the sense that anyone would comment on it.
Yeah. The next, I'm pretty sure that's pretty much everything in terms of ghouls. To move on, 20.5. For those that don't know what that refers to, you don't want to know what it refers to. Trust me. It just don't even look into it. For those that do know what it refers to, the answer is no. No. Just
Yeah,
No.
same goes to anything, any possible scenes like that. Won't be like they won't
for,
be visualized or anything else in the
for the
game.
record, we know that by pretty much being very vague about what we're talking about, we're pretty much forcing the people that don't know what it is to go and look it up to see what we're talking about. But just trust us. Don't look it up.
Short version, it's not safe for work stuff.
Yeah, just don't look it up. Anyways, this one was it wasn't very often, or it was a couple times, but since the game is running on Unity, do I need to download Unity to run the game? The answer is no. Like the game is fully self-contained. It will have Unity in it. Like you don't have to
Yeah,
worry about it.
Unity is a game engine, and when you build a game with Unity, it exports it as a standalone executable, and all the files do it like so you'll be able to run it without actually owning Unity.
The next question, which is again probably one of the most asked questions, is are there voice actor positions open? Which we did kind of already answer. The short answer is no. We're not looking for voice actors right now. The long answer is that right now, or pretty much back in the day, we did have voice actors, as many of you know. And one of the things that, like back then, we were still fairly new at this, and many of us were still in college learning about game development and the process and all that, so we didn't know everything about, or we didn't know as much as we know now. But whenever we did that, the fact of the matter is that we had many points where the voice actors just simply didn't have anything to do. We didn't have all of the voice lines to actually make up, and for the most part, it takes a lot longer to actually write up voice lines than it does to actually record. I mean, that's not to say that voice acting is easy, it just takes a lot less time. I mean, to write up a full script for a character, it might take a week to a month to get everything just right, to sound just right, to work with other story elements. But whenever it comes to actually recording the lines, it might take like 1 day at max. I mean, and that's for like,
Depending on how much there is, but yes, in
yeah,
general,
yeah,
like
yeah.
it's much faster to like obviously to voice the finished lines than it is to actually fully finalize the writing and everything else related to it.
Yeah, so for the most part, we're trying to get the script done first, which is a very slow process.
Yeah, we have a few voice actors, but they are like we don't need any more than we have
It
currently.
they're
Like the
mostly
one,
on they're mostly for like retainers right now. If we do have some voice actor or for voice lines that need to be worked, then they do whatever they can so that we can have some placeholders at worst. And anything that they can't do, we pretty much are just doing in-house with the other team members that have decent mics. So, yeah, I mean, it well,
yeah, since
eventually,
it doesn't make much sense for us to like cast out positions right now, even if we were doing a little bit of that, which was a mistake at the beginning. Yeah, because like Jack already said, we'll just have people sitting around, and even if we had a few lines for them to record for a specific character, unless we have uh, everything written up for that specific character, there is always a chance that by the time that we have like the rest of it done, we don't have that voice actor anymore because they moved on or something else happened or whatever. So
yeah. So it all just comes down to like, it eventually, just not right now.
yeah,
Anyways,
we'll be sure to let you guys know whenever like those will open up, and like we've also mentioned previously, basically every other department does accept applications, and if you are even remotely
except for
interested,
music team.
yeah, except for music, but if you are even remotely interested in possibly joining us, please do send us an application, and you are also of course free to ask any questions related to the application process or anything related.
Yeah, the next one is there going to be a sniper rifle in the game? This was actually asked a surprisingly large amount. The Again, the short answer is yes. The longer answer is that for the most part, the way that we're designing up the sniper rifles is kind of part of our attachment system. The attachment system is pretty much where you can add and remove various different attachments to the weapons, things like scopes, silencers, muzzle brakes, stuff like that. You can add and remove those at will, however you want. They're meant to sort of adjust the stats of the weapon to make them a little bit different. These, like, for the most part, they basically add both buffs and debuffs, so that they're not meant to make the weapon fundamentally better. They're just meant to sort of alter how that it works so that it's a little bit more specialized. We will also be having mods, of course, and those will only be uh, buffs. They won't add any debuffs, but for the attachments, it's kind of a bit of both. And pretty much any weapon in the game can have a scope, and that even means something like okay, any projectile weapon. You're not going to be able to get a scope on a plunger. I'm sorry. Like I know the one guy he modeled up the one I can't remember what it was, like the death machine or whatever. I'm sorry, you're not going to be able to get a plunger with a scope on it or a bipod attachment, but you
Yeah,
will be able.
well, there are a couple obvious exceptions like flare gun and such, but basically any traditional firearm will be able to have a scope.
Yeah, so things like the assault rifle, even things like the 10 millimeter pistol and smaller weapons, those will be able to have scopes, and that also includes energy weapons as well. Uh, so for the most part, yes, there is going to be sniper rifles. It's basically technically like any weapon that you want to be a sniper rifle, but right now the reason why you see, like, for example, the anti-machine rifle without a scope is that for the most part it is currently being designed so that it doesn't have a scope and that it can have a scope added on later on. That even goes funny enough, that even goes for our sniper rifle, which is currently the name of the weapon, which, like, you can take off the scope and use it as just a rifle. So I mean, yeah, we're pretty much designing everything up in that sense rather than just designing up specific weapons that have scopes and that's it. Let's see, move on. Base building. This one's a little bit more trickier to answer. Right now, it's kind of a safe bet to say no. We have talked about maybe having some base upgrading for Junction R7, but we can safely say that anything like Fallout 4, it's not going to happen. Like, creating a system like that is quite advanced, and we have not even remotely planned on something like that, and it would take a lot of planning to do so.
Lots
Yeah, I
of
mean,
planning and lots of programming and implementation. It's just like our game is not even remotely designed around it, so it would just be basically something that we throw in there just for the sake of it, which doesn't really benefit us
yeah,
or the
I mean,
game.
yeah, I mean, whenever it comes to Junction R7, like, for the most part, it would probably be like the one sort of base you get in New Vegas in the damn it, was it the Blues ones, the big mountain one, Drag. What was it called?
Ah, god damn it! I was just like recently playing it, so I I'm losing the name. I can't remember the name, but yeah, the big mountain base where you have like in the old world blues
Yeah, that
expansion.
that was it. Yeah, yeah, the Old War Blues, like the little base that you get into that. It'll be
Oh,
something like
I
that where
thought you meant the name of the base, not the name of the DLC.
no, I meant the DLC, but yeah, like, yeah, it'll probably be something like that where you might find various upgrades throughout the game that you can add on to Junction R7 to make it better. Places where you can store your loot and all that. So I mean, we might do something like that. That's quite significantly more simple than base building, but I mean that's will pretty much be as far as it goes. Uh,
Yeah, there won't be settlements spread around that you can like build at your own leisure.
or assist. Yeah, you can't. Okay, it was a Preston joke. And anyways, uh, next question is: will enemies use cover, heal themselves, use magic? Yes, or sort of. For the first question on cover, there might be some enemies that we'll design up to be able to properly hide behind cover. Maybe that's kind of an iffy thing, but for the most part, ponies are a little bit more difficult because of being quadrupeds and having quite a significantly large head. The fact is that it's pretty much very difficult or next to impossible to properly have them hide behind cover without, also still being pretty easy to shoot.
Yeah,
They just,
they will probably still like use cover in very simplistic manner in terms of that. Like they will run behind the cover, but they just like won't be like attached to it or anything like that. They will just roughly try to place a cover behind between themselves and the any possible enemy fire, and like then peek out from there by just like running to the side a little, or like if it's a low cover by standing up or whatever. But it will be very rather simple behavior.
Yeah. For the healing themselves, yeah, they pretty much will. Like if they have healing items, they'll try to heal themselves. Whether or not that will actually consume that healing item like in their inventory is something that we haven't fully decided on. It's probably something that we're gonna have to play test to see if it's just generally annoying. But yeah, I mean, if they have healing items, they will heal themselves. If they have allies that are capable of casting the healing spell, those people will try to keep their allies healed. So yeah, I mean, we're gonna try to focus on making our enemies very specialized so that, whenever you come across them, you kind of have to know what their specialities are and how to counter them to make it a little bit more engaging gameplay. Which for the second part, the whole use magic thing, obviously, like I just answered, yeah, they will use magic. We'll probably have kind of scale the magic in terms of like taking each spell and the various different upgrades for them and kind of giving like a weight to them, and then based upon that, what spells certain enemies can have. You won't
Yeah,
come.
like some might have like extremely powerful shield spell, but at the same time they can't do any other spells. But then that you might happen to run into some others that like have a whole bunch of different spells, but all of them are a little bit weaker than usual.
Yeah, on top of that, I mean, you obviously also won't be coming across like say a raider that's able to, cast like a singularity or something or raise everyone from the dead. I mean, they like every unicorn will be able to cast magic. It just comes down to how well and how many spells they'll be able to.
And there will probably be certain spells that the NPCs won't be able to use simply because of how very specific they are, and like how they would need to be used to be any effective. So like there certain of them like they just aren't very feasible for NPCs to have. I'm trying to think of an example. I guess
For the most,
telekinesis in is probably going to end up being one that
maybe. I
isn't
mean, I
isn't
could
really
kind of
going
see
to
them.
be used, at least not much.
I mean, I could kind of see it. I mean, it's a little bit more iffy on how like does it could potentially get really really annoying if you just have everything flying at you, but it will definitely be something that's going to have to be properly play tested once we actually get that working for the NPCs.
Well,
uh
yeah,
I
telekinetic launcher they might be able to use, but I mean that like actually levitating stuff around like manually and
Oh
so
yeah,
on.
yeah, I mean it might be
Yeah,
like scripted environments where you might like see a raider levitating like a box around to look like he's working or something, but you're not going to have
yeah,
it where they're holding it out in front of them to cover themselves or something. But yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
and there will probably be some other exceptions as well, but I will of course try to make them be able to use as many of them as feasible.
another great example or another thing is that some of the spells might work slightly different for enemies simply so that they're a little bit more useful for them. One example that I just actually kind of thought of is like we have the trap spell, which is basically it places mines down. Rather than having it where they can just place mines, like say in front of them or anything like the player can, it might have it where they cast it and it might be randomly placed around the map, or it might be placed in front of the player or something like that, where for the most part it's a little bit more useful. Because I mean, if they place it in front of them, it's not going to exactly be too useful for them. But if they have it where you see one of them and their whole job is to randomly place mines around the map, and they'll just constantly hide from you and just keep placing them around to just generally make your life more difficult, then yeah, I mean that's a little bit more useful for as an enemy, but just having it where he places a mine directly in front of him, not so much.
Yeah, granted, even that is kind of advanced behavior in terms of actually
Yeah.
try to get it in any like
I
useful.
have some. We can
So
talk
like
about it later.
yeah,
Like I have
yeah,
some
like
ideas, but
yeah, yeah, like just like not promising that one to happen, but like I said, we'll try our best, obviously.
anyways, the final question that we were going to answer is the leveling up system. I will say that we have thought a little bit about the leveling system, and there is a little bit of changes to it, which we'll go into like in a future blog post. But for the most part, it's still pretty much the same as the rest of the Fallout games. And by what I mean by the level up system is whether or not we're going to be still using perks, or if we're going to change it to say or whether or not we're going to do the perk system like in Fallout 4, or if we're going to keep the skill system like in the previous Fallouts. Again, the short answer is that we are going to be using just the skills, but obviously the perks will be still there as I guess supplemental to the skills. But
Basically, the base of the system is still like that of Fallout 3 or New Vegas and so on, with
yeah,
our some added modifications and dare I say improvements. But yeah, we'll be having another different blog post to actually talk about that. Though you will be able to actually try it out a little bit in the demo as well.
yeah, we actually do have the like in the this demo, we actually started working on the leveling up system, so you'll at least be able to see a basic form of it. I'm not entirely sure if we're gonna how many of the skills are actually going to be useful just yet, because many of them are kind of pointless at this point. I mean, we don't exactly have very many speech options for the player to go through for it to be worth even doing anything for it. But
Yeah, our locks to pick.
yeah, so I mean, some of them probably won't be very useful for quite a while. We might put like a little lock on that so that you don't or accidentally pick a skill that's, useless. But I'm not
Yeah,
entirely.
granted, like at this stage, like it doesn't really matter whether you level up or not that much anyway,
I
since
mean,
there
for
isn't like saving or anything like that yet.
yeah, I mean, not this demo, but the next demo, we very well might have it where like all of the combat skills at least affect things. I mean, that shouldn't be super difficult to do. It's no promise, of course, but we might have that done. But yeah, in terms of like the non-combat skills, like say science, medicine, and stuff like that, it's a little bit more iffy in terms of whether or not they'll even be really an option because of questionable usability right now. But yeah, that's pretty much all of the questions. Hamish, you've been basically quiet this whole time. Well, there you go. Anyways, yeah. So again, like we said a while ago, the biggest thing that you guys can do for us is to spread word about us. Tell your friends about the weird guys that are making a game about ponies murdering one another. Tell them about us. We we're trying to get this to be a game that everyone can enjoy, just get gamers in general, not just MLP fans, not just Fallout fans, people that just like taking a gun and shooting someone in the face in virtual
That
reality.
being said, we are not ignoring neither ponies or Fallout. Like it's not like we are trying to distance ourselves from them in
Yeah, it's
any way. Like it's just that we we are trying to build it up so that people outside of those fandoms are also able to enjoy it as a standalone product.
yeah. So, I mean, again, I hate to do it, but like, share, subscribe. So,
Yeah. So just before we wrap up, or to wrap up, I guess, uh, just to highlight it or emphasize it once more, despite the name change, nothing else it's changing about it. The game will still be based on Fallout Guerrilla by KCAT, and there won't hopefully be any other similar changes, and it won't change the game otherwise in any way outside of the actual what it's called and the logo.
Yeah. So, and also the game will always be free, no matter what. It
Yes.
will always be free. So, yeah, I mean, if you guys have any questions, we'll be sure to answer them. Well, we'll try to answer them as best as we can in the comment section. However, we highly, highly recommend that if you have questions, head over onto our forums, which I hope Drag would like put an annotation like right now, and ask them in our over in our forums.
Yeah. Oh, so of course, yeah. Bleh, can't speak. Of course, if you came to this video through our blog post, then you are already kind of the correct place, since our blog is directly linked to the forum. So commenting on the blog post page is basically uh, sending your forum message.
Yeah. So yeah, well that's about it. We'll try to have another podcast soon. We tend to enjoy doing these. They're probably the most direct way currently for us to talk to you guys, and honestly the easiest to convey what we're trying to do. We do kind of apologize for not having very many in the past. Well, the last one's almost been a year away, so yeah, we do apologize for that. We'll try to have a little bit, do them a little bit more commonly in the future. So yeah, we'll talk to you guys later.
Yeah. So, one final thing.
Oh my God!
I'm so sorry, but we were going to ask it just before, but I guess we forgot, is that we would very much also like to hear your guys' opinion on the whole, whether or not we should do a Patreon, and if you think we should do it, or you will be up for it, what kind of possible rewards or anything like that you would be interested in seeing. Like said, we haven't even fully decided if we are going to do it, but if we are, we would like for you guys to have a say in it, or how it shapes up to be.
Which actually, on top of that, is one thing that we also are gonna like on the whole money thing. Like we said with the whole online store, it's we might be going to BronyCon this year. It's very much up in the air. But we'll also be looking into other cons. So the whole thing is that if you guys have an idea for something that you would like us to do, like say mugs, t-shirts, whatever, leave a comment. We'll very much take it into consideration. And just, it doesn't matter if you think that it's a bad idea, don't even worry about it. Just put it in. Tell us what you guys would like us to try to do. We'll very much take it into consideration. Same with what Drag just mentioned. I can't remember what he said because I don't listen to him, but, do whatever he just said.
And with that, I think we are finished, so have a good
No,
day,
Yeah.
everyone.
No, Drag, you're finished. I'm an American.
But I'm going to go to bed because I'm really tired and it's really late.
Yep, so we'll...
So yeah, thanks for sticking with us this long, if you have. So yeah, talk to you later.
Yeah, see you guys later.